This is amazing grace. This is a failing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You lay down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I'll sing for all that you've done for me. Here we go. Who brings our chaos back into order? Who makes the orphan a son and daughter? The King of glory, the King above all kings. Come on. Who rules the nations with truth and justice, shines like the sun in all of its brilliance. The King of glory, the King above all kings. This is amazing grace. This is a failing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You lay down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. God, worthy is the Lamb. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered. Come on, worthy. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy, worthy, worthy. This is amazing grace. This is a failing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross.
Matthew chapter 5, we've been through some of the Beatitudes, but let me tell you, we're gonna keep going on this morning, because we've got to the Beatitude. It says this: blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. And this whole passage from Jesus, this whole text, you know, is something that has been given to us. They're not necessarily laws that you can keep. They're not rules that you can keep, but they are principles that we can apply to our life. They were given to the disciples 2,000 years ago. But let me tell you, they are just as relevant to you and to me sitting here in Brecon in 2022 as they were to the disciples back then. If you ever aren't sure what to do in 2022, can I say, turn to some of these pages. Turn to Matthew chapter 5. Look at them, study them, and think, man, I need something to do for 2022. Well, Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit. Jesus said, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the meek, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. And this morning, blessed are the merciful, for they will be filled. And all of these things in the Beatitudes, they are principles that don't come naturally to any of us. You know, you can look at some person and you think, oh man, Robert, they're just naturally weak. They've got an advantage over me. Or they're naturally good at mourning or grieving. Or they're naturally good at being merciful to people. I'm just not that way inclined, you know. It's difficult for me to get my head around some of these things. But listen, that's not right. None of us start off higher than others when it comes to being merciful. But these are things just like the fruit of the Spirit. They have to grow within us. They have to be developed. They have to be worked on until they come to fruition fully. And I just want to look at mercy this morning. And I wanted to give you just a quick definition of mercy, because sometimes that helps our discussion. And mercy is an action to relieve suffering. Yeah, I love that when it says it's an action. I don't know if you're an action person or if you're more of a thoughtful person. Maybe you like to get out and just do something, whatever it is. Or maybe you're the sort that maybe likes to contemplate something. Maybe mull it over for a little while. Maybe think it through, digest it before you go into it. But mercy is an action. It's an action that relieves suffering. I'm not talking about the song from Duffy, can you remember? Begging You for Mercy. We're not doing that one. Some of you know it. The more holy ones amongst you don't have a clue what I'm thinking about. Remember that game Mercy when you were a child in school? Maybe it was just us delinquents in the Jones households who played it. You know, Mercy, where you grab someone's hands and it was the first one to twist, and whoever gave up first lost, cried mercy, 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 and the other person had to let you go. Mercy, I'm not talking about that either. Let me tell you, there is not enough mercy in our world. You know, our world is consumed with ourselves. We're consumed about getting on. But there's not much that goes on in terms of relieving suffering for other people. But why is mercy? Why did Jesus say mercy is so important? Let's have a look at a few things. Well, the first thing, why mercy, why being merciful is important is this. Firstly, God has shown mercy to me. God has shown mercy to you. So being merciful in our lives is important. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 4 and 5 says this. But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive even when we were dead in transgressions. We've received mercy from God, and our job is to pass that mercy on. You know, some people in life, they just want to build everything up for themselves. Whether that's, you know, that could be finances, or that could be something else. But you know, as children of God, we're called to, what we receive, we also pass on. And mercy is exactly like that. We're called to be rivers that receive things from God, but also we have an outlet that allows things to be passed on to others who need mercy. It's just like that. It'd be like a boomerang. Can you remember a boomerang? I could never get it to work. You know, I'd throw it at the right angle. It was meant to be coming back to me, but then it would just flop over there. I could never get a jolly boomerang to win. But you know, just as we receive God's mercy, we're meant to pass it on. It's meant to go out from us as well. There's a story in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 18. And it's the story of a king and a servant. And the king calls his people to him and he says, listen, who owes me money? Who needs to settle up with me? Who needs to settle their bill, their account with me? And the first servant comes in, and the servant has an account with the king. And the servant begs the king to write the debt off. And the king looks at him and has mercy on him because he can't afford to pay it and he can't work to repay it. And he lets the servant go free. He has mercy on him. But Jesus continues to tell the story, and the servant later on has his own servant. So he wasn't that lowly, was he? He had another servant who was beneath him. And the lower servant said to the slightly higher, slightly elevated servant, I can't pay it with you. And this middle tier servant said to him, no, you've got to pay it. I'm not letting you off the hook. I'm not letting you clear that. I'll cancel that debt. You must repay that account to me. And he treated him unfairly. But yet the king heard about this story, about how unmerciful the servant was to his servant, and he got the servant back in and he said, I let you off the hook. You were meant to pass that good on, that mercy on. And the king said, I want you to go, you head to jail. You could be punished for what you did. You were meant to pass on the mercy that you had received to someone else. And it's exactly the same in our day and generation. The mercy that we've received from God, we're meant to have an outlet for it as well. We're meant to pass it on. Why else are we to be merciful? Well, secondly, God commands us to be merciful. In Micah chapter 6, verse 8, says this. What does the Lord require of you? What a question to ask. What does God require of you? Can you imagine saying, God, what is it that you require of my life here in Brecon, where I live? What is it that you want me to do? Do you know what the prophet comes back and says this? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Three things: to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. I can do the maths on that. And what that means is that 33%, a third of your Christian walk is meant to be about mercy. A third of your Christian walk is meant to be about showing mercy to other people. Let me say something really controversial now. Do you want something controversial on a Sunday morning? God says being merciful is more important than worship. Being merciful is more important than worshipping. Hosea chapter 6 verse 6 says this: "For I desire mercy, not sacrifice." I desire mercy, not sacrifice. See, God prefers a flexible heart over an inflexible ritual. We can come into church and I love it. I love it. We can do things out of worship. We can do things each and every day which are acts of worship. Great. But even above that, can we be merciful to someone? Can we relieve someone's suffering? Can we help someone in need? There's another story in the Bible that Jesus shared with his disciples. A rich man came over to Jesus and he said, "Jesus, I kept all the laws, you know, the most important ones, the loving the Lord your God with all your heart, loving your neighbour. I've done it." And Jesus says to him, "Well, let me tell you a story. There's something else that you can do." And he tells the story of the man who was beaten up and left for dead and robbed on the side of the road. And two religious guys walk past, a Levite and a Pharisee, I think it is, walks by the guy on the side of the road and ignores him. He sees them. Maybe something went on in their heart towards this guy who was left for dead, but did nothing. Next up, an enemy of the person on the side of the road, a Samaritan, comes up. And he takes the guy, he cleans him up off the street, picks him up, takes him to the nearest travel lodge or Premier Inn, takes him and gets a good meal for him, and says to the owner of the travel lodge, he says, "If there's anything on his account, I'll pay it, I'll settle it." And Jesus says to the rich guy, "Who was the person's neighbour?" And the rich guy says it was the person, the Samaritan, who had mercy on him. Had mercy on him. And Jesus says, "Go and do likewise." God commands you and me to be merciful. But more than that, not just because God commands us to be merciful. Why are we merciful? Because we'll need it in the future. James chapter 2 verse 13 says this: "Speak and act as those who are going to be judged by the law that gives freedom. Because judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful." Mercy triumphs over judgment. You and I, one day, folks, we're going to stand before God and he's going to ask us some questions. And you know, one of those questions is, how merciful have we been? What have we done for other people in our lives? Have our lives just been about us and getting us to heaven? Have our lives just been about having an escalator of faith, you know, that takes us to heaven, and we say, well, hey, let me have the blessing, but let me not put the effort in. Let me have all the rewards of being a Christian, but let me not show that and demonstrate it to other people. We're going to need mercy in the future. Another reason, finally, why we need to be merciful is that being merciful brings happiness. Proverbs 14, chapter 1 says this: "It is a sin to despise one's neighbour, but blessed is the one who is kind to one's neighbour." Another one from Proverbs: "A merciful person helps himself." You know what? When you're being merciful, when you're being generous, when you're relieving suffering of someone else, you're actually helping yourself. It actually does something good on the inside of you. Doesn't it cheer you up when you do something kind? When you do something maybe that's out of the ordinary and you bless someone they weren't expecting, doesn't it just make you feel better? It brings happiness to you. Blessed are the merciful. You can't afford not to be kind for your own sake. But this morning, I want to look at not just why we're to be merciful, but how. How are we going to be merciful? Well, let me give you a few things. How you and I can be merciful in our ordinary lives, in our day-to-day business. Here we go. First one is this: be patient with each other's quirks. Be patient with the people around and about you. Do you know that you're not like everyone else? Not everyone has the same way as doing something as you do. They have little funny ways of doing it. Maybe you're an early morning person, but they're not an early morning person. Maybe they're really active, and maybe you're just happy not to be active. Maybe you like to eat this, but they don't like doing something in that way. Ephesians 4 verse 2 says this: be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. You know, the number one place where you and I can show mercy is at our homes. Is in our homes. That's the number one place where we should be able to show mercy, because when we're at home with each other, you know, our spouses or our children, they know what we're really like. They know what rubs us up the wrong way. They know when we get touchy or grouchy, don't they? Come on, they do. When you're having an off day, they know it. That's why maybe sometimes it's so hard to be merciful to the people who are close to us, but that's where we've got to be extra merciful to those people who are up close, because they see everything. You know, marriage, I say a lot about marriage, but gentlemen, in case you didn't realise it, when you married your wife, you married a sinner. Do you know that? You married a sinner. She doesn't get everything right, does she? But ladies, let me turn to you and say, guess what? You married an even greater sinner. You married an even greater sinner, didn't you? Because he doesn't get everything right. He gets everything right far less than you get it right, don't you? Doesn't he? Yes. All the ladies go, yes. All the men go, no, definitely not. Definitely not. We're always right. We're always right. Never need to ask help when we're going somewhere. Never need a map. No. But someone said this: a great marriage is not a union of two great people. It's a union of two great forgivers. It's a union of two great forgivers. Mercy triumphs over judgment. So be patient with each other's quirks around your family. Number 2, how do I be merciful? Help hurting people around you. You know, you don't have to go far in life, whether it's going to work or people in your family, to find people who are hurting. People who struggle emotionally, financially, physically, mentally. You know what? Proverbs says this: do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is in your power to act. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due. Unless you know someone who's hurting, folks, you must be so consumed with your own life that you can't see the wood through the trees. People are hurting all around you. Be kind, offer support to someone. You know, I find that loads of people, they just want to have a chat sometimes. Some people just love having a phone call. One of my friends, I haven't seen him for a long time, and he's worked at home during the pandemic, and he just said, Rob, he doesn't come to church now. I invited him to church, he's never come. But he says, Rob, I would just love to go for coffee with another bloke. He's got 2 young kids, and he's consumed with work and family, and life is just life. But you just love a chat over a coffee. How easy is that to do for someone who needs it? How else can we be merciful to someone? Let me say, give people a second chance. Give people, when someone wrongs you, what's the first thing you want to do? You either want to get even, or you want to knock them down a peg, don't you? When someone hurts you, you want to get even, or you want to write them off, ignore them, defriend them, delete your contacts from their phone. That's what you and I like to do in reality, isn't it? When someone hurts us. But Ephesians 4 says this: get rid of bitterness, get rid of rage, get rid of anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Those are 6 things, 6 negative things that act as complete opposites to mercy. Bitterness, rage, anger, brawling, slander, along with every form of malice. Listen, get rid of it. I wonder how you're doing with those things. You say, Rob, well, I do kind of like talking about that person who annoyed me behind their back. Or Rob, every now and again I get a bit angry about it. Rob, every now and again I do fly into a bit of a rage because someone's really ticked me off. Get rid of it, folks. Give people a second chance. Another way you can be merciful: help people who have hurt you. help people who have hurt you. You know, people, reason why people often hurt others, we said this before, hurting people hurt. Hurting people hurt. And you know, mercy isn't giving people what they deserve. It's giving people what they need. And isn't that exactly what God has done for you and for me? Rather than giving us what we deserve, he's given us what we need, which is grace and mercy and compassion. Let me just ask you a couple of questions. Who's hurt you in your life? Who's hurt you the most in your life? Maybe another one. Who's hurt you recently in life? It still hurts. Luke chapter 6, Jesus said these words, but love your enemies. Do good to them and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Ouch. Someone say, ouch. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. There's a story, it's a story that's a couple of 100 years old. It was passed down of a man who had committed heinous crimes in the country that he lived. And he'd been brought before the king of that country, along with all of the king's officials. And he'd been brought out to face the gallows. To face the gallows and to be hung. And these leaders of the country were going to make a decision about what to do about this individual who'd done so bad. But the leader of the country had his child alongside him. His child was about the age of 10. And they were talking about whether they were going to hang this criminal. And the boy turned to his dad and said, Dad, how about instead of hanging him, we hang on to him? Instead of hanging him, we hang on to him. Loving your enemies is tough. Let me give you one final thing that we can do to be merciful. It's to build bridges to the unpopular. You know, we as Christians should be intentional about building people who don't come to church, building relationships and bridges with people who don't come to church. Why? Why should we be doing that? Why should we be doing this as Christians? Because you can't win your enemies to Christ. You can only win your friends. You can only win your friends. If you haven't got any friends who aren't Christians, folks, you've got no one that you can share the good news with. You've got no one who you can bring hope to. You've got no one who you can bring life in Jesus and share Jesus with. Jesus did exactly this. He hung out with tax collectors who were the scum of the earth. He hung out with lepers who no one wanted to go near. He hung out with prostitutes who no one wanted to go near. And the Pharisees, the religious people of the time, they called these people scum, but Jesus called them sick. They called them scum, but Jesus called them sick. When I was in school, we had a group of friends, there were about 10 of us. And a lad moved into the area and he started coming to school. And he was a bit different to the rest of us. He behaved differently. He wasn't one of the in crowd. And when it came round to my birthday, I put a list together of all the people that were coming. And they were all of the usual friends, you know, that had been with me for the last 3 or 4 years growing up in primary school. And my mum and dad said to me, what about this boy? You haven't invited him. And I said, no. He doesn't hang around with us. We don't have anything to do with him. And they said, he's coming to your party. You make sure you send an invitation to him. We've got to be building bridges with people who are different to us, with people who are unpopular, with people that society writes off. As we put together our church program, you know, for the coming months, and, you know, midweek activities, weekend stuff, you know, we try and put something on for every week for you to go to. But you know what? If I could give you some instruction, maybe some homework, it would be this. Spend one night of your week going to a club or an activity or being with friends who aren't Christians. I know of one guy at university. He joined the drink. He was teetotal, completely teetotal. And do you know what he did? He went and joined the drinking club just so that he could tell people about Jesus. Just so that he could offer them hope when they were drunk. Just so that they could offer them hope when they were looking into another pint over the bar. Just so when they were playing drinking games, there would be someone there who could help them up off the floor. That's mercy, folks. Rob, you could say, isn't this mercy stuff going a little bit overboard? Maybe. But let me tell you, when Jesus gave his life for you and for me, when he put his arms out on the cross and allowed himself to be nailed to that wooden cross, he went overboard for you. He went so over the top. He went so extravagantly over the top to reach you and to reach me. I think in our lives, we can go and do mercy over the top as well. Let's bow our heads as we close in prayer. You can bow your head, but maybe you don't have to just close your eyes. As we talk, as we finish this service, I just want you to think maybe someone this week, who can you be merciful to? Maybe, who can you be merciful to who's hurt you in the past? Who this week could you give a second chance to? Who this week could you give a chance to who offends you? Who this week could you maybe invite over for lunch and be a friend to them? What unbeliever this week could you invite over for dinner or go for a coffee with and just spend time with them? Think of those names who maybe this week you could get alongside.